When does that 48 hours start? Do you know how many hours are we into that 48 hours?
Essentially, 3:30 Saturday is D-Day for the president to, one, correct the messy disappointment of Andrew Whitfield, because the justification of his dismissal absolutely makes no sense. But number two, for him to show South Africans the true exercise of his constitutional prerogative to fire Minister Nobuhle Nkabane, to fire Minister Thembisi Melane, and to fire Deputy Minister David Mahlobo.
The Democratic Alliance will not submit a nomination or a name to the president for the replacement of Andrew Whitfield?
No, we won't.
You won't
48 hours, must fix it. And after 48 hours, FedEx will take a decision with the leader if the president does not abide on what the next step is. You can't just sit by and have the case. And then when you do actually blow the whistle, have a president that has the audacity to get rid of you without affording the leader of the political party that Andrew Whitfield comes from the opportunity to not only fairly engage Andrew, fairly engage the other leadership in the party, and also fairly engage the president.
Okay.
The president is bullying Andrew.
Guys, so this guy, Andrew Whitfield, and the fact that he's just been fired from the GNU is actually shaking all of South Africa. And for me, it's really fascinating. You know, one of the reasons why I really enjoy doing what I do on this channel is the fact that, you know, we have a government in Africa, right, that actually sort of like reflects both a white and black and colored, and, you know, I think even Indian leadership within the bodies of power that govern the state. It's fascinating for me, really, to really see this possibility, because it kind of like opens new ways of seeing probably governance and alternative scenarios on how probably some kind of government could emerge in Africa going forward. And we still see South Africa being a stronghold in that kind of leadership, in all of that. And so for me, it's really fascinating. And so that's why many times when I see these comments by many black South Africans, I see them on my comments arguing that, you know, you are Nigerian, you should focus on Nigerian politics, stop commenting on South African politics. I usually feel that, you know, that's a really lazy argument. It's a really limited view of understanding of our Africanness. All right, it's like saying you have no right to probably apply for a job at the United Nations, or maybe vote for certain issues around several countries in the United Nations because you are from one particular country. In this kind of places, for example, you have to understand other countries to be able to have a voice or say or vote regarding something. And until you study and understand those things, how do you participate? So many times these black South Africans on my channel, you guys, I'm usually, not all of them though, there are some really nice ones, but many times I'm usually marveled at how this kind of mentalities and these thoughts come true. But anyway, what we do here on Kwazem is that we try to see South Africa, especially from the eyes of the minorities, all right, so that we can have a really extended view of how different people groups in South Africa see South Africa. And then it actually gives me personally as an African a window on how Africa can actually be seen from this multiple perspectives. So that's really one of the things I enjoy in this channel. So now, I usually like to call her the upcoming Iron Lady, Karabo Kakao of the DA. She's weighing in on this whole argument as regards the ousting of Whitfield, Andrew Whitfield. And, you know, when I even listen to the guy, Andrew Whitfield, he really looks like somebody who's actually difficult to work with. He looks like someone who might ask, you know, these uncomfortable questions and all of that. I think this has actually been the basis. In several interviews, I think I'll be doing some videos on those. Yeah, he's actually alleged to have been asking some really difficult questions regarding some issues around how the ANC has been conducting things in the ministry he was appointed in. And although some of the basic reasons anyway for his firing was the fact that he had the trip to the United States without proper authorization from the presidency and all of that, you know, that actually played into that. I'll be making some videos anyway. You listen to it, yourself from Andrew Whitfield on how he articulates the reasons why he's been fired. But I think one of them actually is also this fact that he really has been asking these really difficult questions in the ministry where he's been appointed, and I think probably it might not have really gone down so well with some people. I really don't know, allegedly. But anyway, Karabo Kakao now is actually giving a clarity because the DA seems to have given a 48-hour ultimatum for the president to, I don't know if they'll be able to reinstate Whitfield, but they're giving the president an ultimatum to at least fire Tembisa, the one with the, I think it was she had issues with money from a VBS, that VBS scandal at that time, and that I think it was argued then when I used to do the Daily Maverick analysis, she actually had some of that money from a municipality, Polokwane, to get a coffee shop and all of that. So instead of her being fired, I think she was moved to the Ministry of Human Settlements. I think she was a former finance, she was a former So Karabo Kakao is now actually giving clearance on, what the DA meant by its 48-day ultimatum, because I really don't know if the DA's Andrew Whitfield would be reinstated back to his position as deputy minister. But the DA wants the president to also fire several ministers, including the very interesting one I covered a lot on this channel. I think her name was Tembi Similane. She was a former justice minister who was then eventually moved to the Ministry of Human Settlements after several issues around her, how she allegedly misappropriated some funds from, I think it was the Polokwane municipality or so, and then used that in some kind of so this was a big case that Breitenbach, the justice rep in the DA, Breitenbach, really followed head on, and really the rep Tembi Similane really got a lot of heat from multiple parties at that time. And so rather than fire her, I think she was moved to the Ministry of Human Settlement, and that really didn't sit well for many parties, and especially now the DA. So now Karabo Kakao is actually calling also for the presidency to, if this kind of direct firing can be done for deputy minister from DA who is a member of the GNU, second largest party in the GNU, then there should be reason to fire some of these ANC ministers as well, who have actually also been caught, or probably allegedly caught in certain issues and all of that. So this is the perspective the DA is coming from, and Karabo Kakao really communicates it really clearly in this discussion she has with Aldrin here, and I think it's really important that we understand where the DA is coming from, and what would become from this ousting of the DA rep Andrew Whitfield from the GNU. But anyway, let's quickly listen to the discussion. Really powerful. I admonish you guys to watch to the end, because Karabo Kakao, I usually like to call her the second upcoming Iron Lady in the DA, and she's really clear in her communication of facts, and argues that I think she even thinks that Andrew Whitfield is being bullied by the presidents in South Africa. Let's listen and share your thoughts, guys, in the comments.
In the meantime, let's bring in Karabo Kakao, who is the spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance. A very good morning to you, Karabo. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Yesterday, the Democratic Alliance gave the president 48 hours to also fire ministers within the Government of National Unity, within his executive, that the Democratic Alliance deemed are not fit and proper to be in those positions. When does that 48 hours start? Do you know how many hours are we into that 48 hours?
Good morning, Aldrin. Thank you so much for having me on your show, and good morning to your Newsroom Africa viewers. 48 hours started 3:30 yesterday. So 3:30 in the afternoon, so we can do the calculations there. I haven't done the calculations, but essentially 3:30 Saturday is D-Day for the president to, one, correct the messy disappointment of Andrew Whitfield, because the justification of his dismissal absolutely makes no sense. But number two, for him to show South Africans the true exercise of his constitutional prerogative to fire Minister Nobuhle Nkabane, to fire Minister Thembisi Melane, and to fire Deputy Minister David Mahlobo. Those are people who are guilty of far deeper problems and misconduct than what Andrew could have ever been guilty of. Nobuhle Nkabane, not only has she lied to Parliament repeatedly, but by extension the people of the Republic of South Africa. That in itself is a criminal offense, trying to undermine the work of Parliament, but also taking South Africa on a ride and not rating South Africans at all by manipulating processes for appointment of board chairpersons and trying to cover it up with a panel that constitutes of people that are not only independent, as she claims is the case, but two, of people who Aldrin begs the question of whether they exist at all. If the chairperson of the said panel himself says he never sat on this panel, then it begs the question on whether actually this panel truly exists. So that's one example that the minister can show the Republic that he actually is. That's one opportunity that the president can show the Republic that he runs a tight ship, that he is very serious about holding ministers accountable for misconduct. The same could be done with Thembisi Melane. It wasn't good enough that he shuffled her from one ministry to another. Thembisi Melane, given her involvement with the VBS scandal, was supposed to be sitting at home by now. That's a good example to show South Africans that you care about them and that you do not want to harbor corrupt and compromised ministers in your cabinet. David Mahlobo is an excellent opportunity for the president to show South Africans who he actually cares about. You can't have a person who is listed in the Zondo report on state capture, sitting within your cabinet. Not only did you bring him back from the previous administration, but he serves in the same portfolio that he served in the past where he was found guilty. So this thing altogether that the president is doing, we maintain as the Democratic Alliance, that it has absolutely nothing to do with Andrew Whitfield supposedly having not gotten permission to go, but it has everything to do with the fact that the president is uncomfortable with the questions, there being questions that link to the deputy president of this country, potential webs of corruption there, and instead of practicing efficacy within his own campus, within his own caucus, he wants to take a jab on the DA for the reasons that don't exist.
Okay, just quickly then, Karabo, in the meantime, the Democratic Alliance will not submit a nomination or a name to the president for the replacement of Andrew Whitfield?
No, we won't.
You won't
48 hours, must fix it. And after 48 hours, FedEx will take a decision with the leader if the president does not abide on what the next step is.
What sort of decisions are you looking at? What are your options?
There are no options that I can discuss with you on the table right now. The only option that exists for President Ramaphosa is to reinstate Andrew Whitfield. The other option is to fire Nobuhle Nkabane, to fire David Mahlobo, and to fire Thembisi Melane. The bottom line is the Democratic Alliance still has 100% faith in Andrew Whitfield. The fact that he has been able to rattle the cage so much so that the president is shaking in his boots to even fire him shows you that he's been doing an excellent job in pointing and blowing the whistle on decisions that are not in the best interest of South Africans. You cannot sit by when the lottery licenses are given out like it's trick or treat for Halloween and think you can't just sit by and have the case. And then when you do actually blow the whistle, have a president that has the audacity to get rid of you without affording the leader of the political party that Andrew Whitfield comes from the opportunity to not only fairly engage Andrew, fairly engage the other leadership in the party, and also fairly engage the president.
Okay.
The president is bullying Andrew.
Okay, let me quickly bring in Andrew here before we conclude the conversation.